It means we can't just fix reading struggles with phonics alone. We need to ensure our dyslexic students are building rich vocabularies and deep knowledge about the world while they're still mastering how to decode. I'm Jenny Scherson, ex-special educator turned dyslexia interventionist. It wasn't so long ago that I, too, was overwhelmed by balanced literacy versus structured literacy, education speak, and everything in between. Fast forward after many, many hours of self-driven education, and you'll see I've built a thriving dyslexia practice helping students from age 6 to 18. My specialties? Working with a quote-unquote difficult, almost always 2E, student, and breaking down the complexities of dyslexia into everyday language strategies and action steps. Your dyslexic child finally learned to decode words. They can sound out almost anything you put in front of them, but they're still struggling with comprehension, and you're wondering, wait, wasn't learning to read supposed to fix this? Today, we're talking about something that's causing a massive shift in how we think about reading instruction, and it's especially important for dyslexic students. For decades, we focused almost exclusively on phonics and decoding for struggling readers. And yes, those skills are absolutely essential. But the latest research is showing us that decoding is only half the equation. And for many dyslexic students, even after they master decoding, comprehension remains a challenge. Today, we're diving into why that happens and what you need to know. Let's start with how we used to think about reading. The old approach was pretty straightforward. Teach kids to decode first, and comprehension will naturally follow. Once they can sound out the words, they'll understand what they're reading, right? Not exactly. And this is where so many dyslexic students and their parents get blindsided. There's a formula in reading research called the simple view of reading. It says that reading comprehension equals decoding times language comprehension. Both pieces have to be in place. You can be a fantastic decoder, but if you don't have strong language comprehension, which includes vocabulary, background knowledge, and understanding sentence structure, you're going to struggle to understand what you read. Here's what's changing in the research. We used to think of comprehension as a set of skills you could teach, like finding the main idea or making inferences. And while those thinking strategies can be helpful, the latest research is showing that comprehension is actually much more dependent on knowledge than we realized. Let me put it simply. You can't comprehend what you're reading if you don't know enough about the topic. If I hand you an article about quantum physics and you don't have the vocabulary or background knowledge about physics, no amount of comprehension strategies is going to help you truly understand it. Knowledge is the foundation. This is where things get really interesting for dyslexic students. Recent research is showing that building background knowledge and vocabulary, particularly in science and social studies topics, has a bigger impact on reading comprehension than we ever understood. Studies are showing that when schools systematically build background knowledge and vocabulary over time, spiraling back to topics and adding depth, students show sustained gains in reading comprehension that last well beyond the instruction. We're not talking about reading strategies. We're talking about teaching kids about the world, science concepts, historical events, and how things work. And here's what this means for your dyslexic child. Many dyslexic students actually have strong listening comprehension and reasoning abilities. When they hear complex texts read aloud, texts they can't decode yet themselves, they can understand sophisticated ideas. They have the thinking skills. What they're missing is the decoding automaticity and often exposure to rich content. This is why so many dyslexic kids can have amazing conversations, can understand documentaries, can follow complex storylines when they're listening, but struggle when they're reading independently. It's not their brain's ability to comprehend that's the problem. It's the bottleneck of decoding that's preventing them from accessing the content they need to build that knowledge base. The knowledge gap is real. Kids who struggle to read in the early grades miss out on thousands of hours of reading practice that their peers are getting. And it's not just practice in decoding. They're missing exposure to new vocabulary, new concepts, new information about the world. This gap widens over time unless we're intentional about building knowledge through other pathways. So now let me talk about fluency. For years, fluency was measured primarily by speed. how many words per minute a child could read. And while automaticity is important, there's so much more to fluency than just reading fast. We need to focus on something called prosody. Prosody is reading with appropriate expression, phrasing, and intonation. It's the difference between reading like a robot, word by word, and reading that sounds like natural speech with pauses in the right places and emphasis on the right words. And here's why prosody matters. It's not just about sounding good when you read aloud. Prosody is actually an indicator of comprehension. When a student reads with good prosody, it shows they're grouping words into meaningful sentences. They're understanding the syntax and they're processing meaning as they go. Prosody is the bridge between decoding and comprehension. Studies have shown that teaching students to focus on prosody, reading with expression and appropriate phrasing, actually improves both fluency and comprehension more than just focusing on speed and accuracy alone. For dyslexic students, this is crucial. Many dyslexic readers can eventually decode accurately, but they may still read slowly and without expression because they're working so hard on the mechanics. Understanding that fluency is about more than speed changes how we support them. So what does all of this research mean for how your child should be taught? And what should you be looking for? First, comprehensive reading instruction needs to include both pathways. Yes, your dyslexic child needs systematic, explicit phonics instruction, but they also need rich exposure to content, science, social studies, and literature while they're building those decoding skills. These pathways work together, not one after the other. And here are some red flags to watch for. If your child's reading intervention consists only of decodable text with controlled vocabulary, they're not getting exposure to the rich language and concepts they need for comprehension development. If the school is only measuring progress by decoding speed and accuracy without looking at comprehension, that's a problem. If there's no intentional vocabulary instruction or content area learning happening, that's a gap. Your child's IEP should address both decoding and comprehension. Comprehension goals should go beyond generic answering questions about a passage, and your child should have access to grade level content in science and social studies, even while they're still building their decoding skills through accommodations like audiobooks, read alouds, and text to speech. And now here's where things can get tricky. Knowing what should happen and actually getting it to happen in your child's IEP are two very different things. Knowing what question to ask, how to phrase your requests, which accommodations to prioritize, and how to respond when the school pushes back. That's where parents often get stuck. And this is exactly why I created my Together Through Dyslexia mentorship program. We work together one-on-one so I can help you understand what your child needs specifically based on their profile, how to translate this research into actual IEP language, and how to advocate effectively without the overwhelm. You can learn more at literacyuntangled.com/together-through-dyslexia. Because understanding the research is one thing, knowing how to use it to get your child what they need is another. Okay, here are your immediate action steps. First, take an honest look at what's happening in your child's reading instruction. Are they getting both systematic phonics and exposure to rich content and vocabulary? Just notice what's there and what's missing. Second, start thinking about questions for your next IEP meeting. How is my child's background knowledge being built while they're working on decoding? What accommodations are in place so my child can access grade level content? How are fluency goals addressing more than just speed? Third, pay attention to the knowledge gaps. What topics does your child know a lot about and what areas are they missing? This awareness will help you understand their comprehension strengths and challenges. Fourth, if you're realizing you need help figuring out how to actually advocate for these changes, that's what I'm here for. Let's work together to get your child what they need. The shift toward understanding comprehension as knowledge dependent rather than just skill based is huge. It means we can't just fix reading struggles with phonics alone. We need to ensure our dyslexic students are building rich vocabularies and deep knowledge about the world while they're still mastering how to decode. The good news? Many dyslexic students have strong reasoning abilities and can build this knowledge beautifully when we give them the access to the right pathways. Don't let the decoding struggle prevent them from becoming knowledgeable, thinking readers. If you have questions about comprehension and dyslexia, sneak on into my inbox and I'd love to hear from you. Until next time, bye-bye. I hope you enjoyed this episode of Literacy Untangled. If you loved this episode as much as I did, head on over and rate and subscribe so you never miss an episode. If you want to continue the conversation or share your takeaways, head on over to our Instagram at Literacy Untangled and comment on your favorite part. I can't wait to hang out with you again soon. Bye.